I honestly never thought that my weird kind of way of making sounds with the guitar would ever become a thing.
The way he can take one single guitar and create this incredible sound, it's really special.
I'm just feeling it in my core, and I feel what the next note's going to be. And sometimes I just put my hands to the instrument, but I'm never premeditating any of this stuff. There's a lot of really colorful forms and phrases and really deeply emotional things happening in the guitar that when you crank it up and you get into the music, get into the stereo field, there's some pretty profound things happening. I guess a lot of the magic happens after you've played the notes, and these notes are ringing out and echoing and merging and crossing over and shaking hands with and passing by previous phrases. And when it really does come together, some things happen that you could never have consciously thought of. Harmonies are created, chords happen that you don't even think about. My style of guitar playing has always been part of my music. It's been woven in with all the synthesizers I love and ethnic percussion and big, huge sounds. So to have it be just the guitar by itself, for me, it's a completely new frontier of music.
It's a huge part of his music and our music together. So it was nice to see that just kind of step out and just take front and center, and to now be able to have a full 68-minute listening experience created from David's guitar. It's really long overdue.
Well, I started playing guitar in high school. I was really into U2, the band U2, and I was really attracted to this guitar sound that I had never heard on a rock and roll record before. I immediately started experimenting with digital delay units and guitar pedals and reverbs and echoes, and I really just wanted to do that music. There is one song on my first record, Between Green and Blue, called Loss of Words, that was just me improvising guitar to a 2-track DAT tape machine, which is a long dead format. Everything was very spontaneous. I wasn't thinking about anything. I had no intention of taking the music I was recording that night and putting it out, or even playing it for anybody, for that matter. So that's the only time I've ever done guitar really by itself. So after the release of my second record, Sleeping on the Edge of the World, I started collaborating with recording artist John Jenkins on what would become an epic trilogy of albums. He really embraced this weird guitar music that I was doing, which, to be honest, not a lot of other people that I'd worked with in the past had.
When David and I first started working on the music that would eventually become our first collaboration together, Treasure, David's guitar sound was always a huge part of that experience.
He would really encourage me to play more or to expand on these ambient guitar phrases and these longer delays and these really long modulated reverbs and stuff. And he really encouraged me to go farther and to go deeper.
On the subsequent albums that we did after Treasure, which are The Crossing and then Found, that guitar sound is always in there. It's always an undercurrent. Even on some tracks, you might not even realize it. But it's recognizable throughout the entire trilogy, and I think it makes it a really wonderful experience.
Once the trilogy with Jenkins was complete, I was really focused on my next solo release. I really wasn't making time for the guitar experimentation. So I said, you know what? I'm going to make myself pick up the guitar and make some ambient guitar music. So every Sunday night, I would sit down with the guitar, press record, and just improvise an ambient guitar piece in a single take, and then immediately post it to YouTube with some visuals, just sharing it, really. So that's what started the Sunday Loops. Once I started talking with John Jenkins about, what do you think about putting an ambient guitar record together? And John was like, well, you are working on your big album right now, and maybe you should focus on that.
David has been working real hard on his next solo album. I've heard a lot of it, and it's going to be a huge, amazing sounding album. So I was a little surprised when he came to us with this idea of doing an ambient guitar album. I was a little worried, and I even tried to talk him out of it and tell him to wait until after the next album came out. And then ultimately, just something about it I really loved. It was definitely worthy of getting out there so that people could hear it. So we did.
John sent me this rough mix of his concept of what would become A Sea Without Memory. He started overlapping and fading these tracks together, and there was so much magic in the transition from one piece of ambient music that was waning to another one that was building, and it was something that I had certainly never heard before. So I immediately got inspired, and I started seeing the images, and the poetry all just came to mind.
When we were working on Found, I remember there was this photographer from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Sean Malone. She sent through these images in movies of the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. I just remember how stunning those images were, and it's really great to see how inspired David has been by Sean's work. I think she did some of the images for the Sunday Loop series.
So Sean Malone created and captured these stunning visuals, landscapes, water, and the Northern Lights. And when I started doing the Sunday Loops and putting those out every week, I think at some point I asked her if she wouldn't mind providing some of the visuals for the Sunday Loops. It became where, as I sat down to play a loop on a Sunday night, I would think of Sean's visuals. So a lot of the music was written imagining those cold, colorful nightscapes that she is so famous for. I don't think there was any question that when it became an album, all of the imagery had to be from Sean's work, because that's really what inspired much of the music on the album.
The combination of Sean's images and Daniel Pipitone's graphic design on that digital booklet that's included, and the photography of Joe Abreu, all those things coming together in this amazing 14-page digital booklet. I don't think the label has ever put out anything with that kind of a artwork spread before.
So by the time it got into the hands of Howard Gibbons, who has done all the mastering for A Sea Without Memory, it just took this thing that was already incredible and just became so crystal clear that I was really overwhelmed. I was like, wow, how fortunate am I to be with people like John Jenkins and Howard Gibbons, Daniel Pipitone, and Sean Malone to help me bring this record to the listeners. It's just amazing. It wasn't until I heard the experience that John had started building and creating that I started to understand what it's like to sit in the listener's seat and hear the music. Waves of sound would go past you and behind you, and then the sound would dip down and there'd be a moment of sort of stillness, and then another wave of sound would come towards you, overwhelm you, go around you, through you. The listener's sitting in one space and the journey is coming to them. I think every listener's going to have their own experience with a record like this.
Hearing the Sunday Loops on YouTube and seeing David really feature that side of his work was really cool, and I was so happy to see it. But then to be able to take that material and make an experience like A Sea Without Memory built out of those pieces into something so big and so special, for me was very satisfying, and hopefully for the listener it will be too.